Hi everyone, welcome to another new episode of Why People Buy, where I'm going to really delve into something really exciting. I'm very excited about this particular episode because we have with us somebody who is an expert on why people buy. We have Deepak with us today, who is an assistant professor of marketing and behavioral consumer behavior and behavioral science. And Deepak is here to answer a lot of questions I have about the fundamentals of why people buy and a little bit about the applications of consumer behavior and psychology. Deepak, welcome. So excited to have you with us today.
Thank you, Aditi, for having me. I'm equally excited. And thanks for the introduction. Yes, I'm an assistant professor at UBC Sauder School of Business. So it happens to be in Vancouver, and my background is the beautiful Vancouver city where I recently moved here after finishing my PhD in the US. And the question why consumers buy or why do we buy is a very big one, and we can approach it from so many lenses: the philosophical, the psychological, the sociological. I happen to be studying from the human psychology side, and it's been over 7 to 8 years that I'm in this field. So I'll try to give my perspective from the research that's been done by me and some of my colleagues and the community of consumer behavior researchers. And having said that, the more you know, the more you know that you don't know. So I will only be scratching the surface and hopefully igniting your curiosities into some of you, the viewers, can take up this path in a more academic way and then answer some of the questions yourself.
Absolutely. In fact, Deepak is also he was a startup operator before he became an academic. So there's a lot of things we'll get to learn because you have done the application side of things, and then you've also been studying it. So I'm sure you have a perspective which is very unique, Deepak. Super excited. You
Thank
have
you.
recently published, I think, a paper where you talk about consumer ratings. You've studied consumer ratings, right? And that's a very interesting topic, especially because I mean, not just as a marketer, but even as a consumer, right? Like today, everybody
Yeah.
just relies on ratings. Amazon में
Yeah.
जाते हैं, first instinct is यार rating देख लो. And then the next step is, कितने लोगों ने rate किया है. But sometimes that's also not as important as just looking at the overall ratings, right? So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about some interesting insights
Yeah.
from your paper on consumer ratings and what are the biases and how can companies or how do companies today leverage some of those insights on consumer ratings.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to share details of my recently published article. But before that, it's very interesting that the format of the podcast is we can mix Hindi and English. So I welcome that.
Absolutely.
uh, so a lot of my research currently is in how people perceive numbers and how people make sense of numbers to make decisions. And as Aditi said, ratings are everywhere. We don't even make any purchase anymore without seeing ratings, even if it's an offline store, or we would check trustpilot.com. I don't know what website is in India popular, but Trustpilot is very popular in the West. That even if it's an offline store, you would check the ratings. And with Practo in India, now doctors are also rated. So we check doctors' ratings before they check our health ratings. So yeah, ratings are everywhere, and even beyond ratings, numbers are everywhere. On your phone, there's battery percentages. You have Apple Watch. I'm wearing one right now, and it shows me a lot of information that how many steps did I do today, how whether I achieved my goals and all. So numbers are everywhere. That's a pretty short statement. And within e-commerce, ratings are everywhere. And what's happening in the digital world, that numbers are not just shown as numbers can also be shown as pictures. Specifically, we see that Apple Watch uses circles and to show you your activity monitor, and your phone battery percentages could be shown using a bar, right? I can show you my phone right now, and maybe you can have later built-in pictures for this podcast. I've set my battery percentage to be shown as a rectangular bar, and the proportion filled of the bar gives me a sense of how much battery is left. So, and in retail or a rating context, you can use star images to show what the rating is. So let's say the rating is 4.2. What you can do is you can create an image of 5 stars, color the first 4 stars, and then color only 20% of the fifth star to show 4.2. So that what we call is a graphical representation of numerical quantities. I don't like to use jargons, but let's just say that's a graphical way to show numbers. And the other way is the numerical way, where we write the number 4.2. And we find in this paper that neither of these two formats result in an accurate perception of the numerical quantity. So for 4.2, and this is not my work, this has been known for hundreds of years, that for the number 4.2, we anchor our judgment on the left digit, which is 4. And that's why a lot of companies use the 99 ending prices. Why do you think a lot of prices are 4.99 or 5.99, and in India it could be 1099? Because we anchor on that one, the left digit, and our brain sort of ignores the right digit, not completely but partially. It ignores the right digit. So what we think the magnitude is, it is actually our estimate of the magnitude is smaller than what it actually is. And Aditi, please stop me anywhere while I'm talking about
So
this
if I'm
research if
understanding
something is not.
correctly, if I see a 4.25 rating, right,
Yeah,
versus or a 4.20 rating versus if I see a 4 followed by a little bit more colored on the stars, right, then I will overestimate the stars in that case.
yeah. I'll come to the star part.
Yeah.
I'm just describing right now what happens when you see a
Okay.
4.2 number rating.
Got it. Got it. So
Even
in the
for
number, then what
4.
is the perception? Then I think that it's lower. Is that what I would
It's
think?
lower, yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
let's say the rating is 4.75.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
calculate the bias. It's about, you would think that this rating is about 4.68 in your brain instead of
Okay.
4.75.
Interesting.
So there is some
Interesting.
0.07 is the magnitude of the bias. That is the underestimation that we do for a point 0.7 for 4.75 rating. And for 4.5, the underestimation is about 0.05. So 4.5 rating feels like 4.45. And we can
Wow.
go into the details of what this feels like, and we
Right.
can leave that discussion later in the podcast.
Yeah.
But the intuitive assessment of this number is less than what it is when ratings are shown using numerical part, because we anchor on the left digit, and that's
And
been
it
known for a long time. Yeah,
doesn't matter the number of decimals, or does that matter? So 4.50 versus 4.55.
it would not matter by the number of decimals, but it would matter as to how far this rating is from 4. So
Okay.
for 4.2, the bias is less than 4.9.
Wow.
Because think about it like this: if you're using 4 as an anchor for 4.2, that's fine. But to use an anchor of 4 for a 4.9 is a bigger mistake, because 4.9 is almost 5. So if you treat something almost like 5 as a 4, then you will end up making bigger errors than
Right.
treating 4.2 as almost like 4. That's fine. So the farther away from you are from 4, the bigger is the underestimation.
Got it.
So now we show that when numbers are shown using pictures, like in stars, the opposite happens. And this is the novel discovery that we made, that for 4.2 stars, because our brain has an innate tendency of completing incomplete pictures, at a very early stage of perception, we see 5. We complete the fifth star, which is partially filled, because our brain is always completing incomplete pictures. Like right now, I'm not seeing your legs, but my brain is intuitively completing you. And later, maybe I can recognize, oh, I can only see Aditi's top. But at a very early stage of perception, my brain registered you as a whole person. It did not mistake to thinking that, oh, you don't have legs, right? So we are always completing incomplete pictures. So we complete this partial star in our brains. So then the value we're anchoring for a 4.2 stars is 5 stars, and that's why we overestimate this quantity. And the beautiful thing is, just like we underestimate more for 4.7 than 4.2, here we overestimate more for 4.2 stars and 4.7 stars, because to treat a 4.2 star like a 5 is a bigger mistake than to treat like a 4.7 star like a 5 star. So we also calculated the amount of bias here, and yeah,
What is the
I'll
amount
let
of
you.
bias in this case with respect to
Yeah.
stars?
So the amount of bias in stars is actually almost triple the size of the amount of bias we have in numbers. So for 4.2 stars, it's treated almost like a 4.35 stars in our brain. So it's a 0.15 sort of bias. So not 3 times, but 2 times. Yeah, 2 times. And for 4.5, it's treated somewhat like 4.6.
Wow. And is there also the element of, whole numbers there where you'll probably, so let's say if something is a
Yeah.
4.35, you'll think it's just like almost a 4.5?
So you're saying if it's 4.35, how much will I think it is?
Yeah, would I also think of sort of just going to the next whole number, or the next sort of, instead of 3.5 you just make it a 4.5? Do you see something like that also in addition to the bias?
So what we see is for whole numbers there is no bias. When you see 4 stars, you
Yeah.
don't do any bias because the picture is already complete. You only see four
Okay.
stars. There is no incomplete picture. But I think what you were trying to say is if you see 4.35 stars, how do you register it? The
Yeah.
amount of bias is the same there. It is about 0.15. So 4.35 would be seen as a 4.5.
As a 4.5. Got it. Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. So then how are companies really, do you see companies actually knowingly or unknowingly leverage this bias that people have, humans have, towards graphical versus, let's say, numerical representation of ratings?
Yeah. Yeah. So to before answering this question, to reiterate the findings, we
Yeah.
overestimate graphical numbers and we underestimate numbers as numbers. But then the
Right.
overestimation is way more strong than the underestimation. And now, what does it mean for companies? It has a clear implication that if you're a seller on Amazon, you should want Amazon to show ratings as star symbols because then your product looks better than what it is. Uh, and that's why we see most platforms use graphical ratings. It's very rare nowadays. More and more companies are doing some numerical ratings, but why did star ratings become so popular? Where did this concept come from? I think, and I can't go back and ask these managers, but I think one reason was they realized maybe using some A/B tests or something that star ratings work better. That consumer thinks these products are better than what they are, and some companies might be switching back to numbers because imagine you're Amazon, you're raising quality expectations of consumers, right, by thinking this product is better than what it is, so your returns might increase and consumer disappointment might increase. So, and I'm working on more projects in this space, and I don't want to speak too early, but this is just magnitude estimation that we looked at. But what about customer experience? How do you create a better customer experience? That the answer could be different there, whether to use stars versus numbers. So for a platform, it's a multidimensional question, which is multifaceted question, which is not just about showing your products in a better light. Um, Platforms as in where they have multiple sellers, but let's say you are a D2C brand. Let's say
Yeah.
you only sell your products, right? I think let's say you're an upcoming startup, you only sell your products. I think there the answer is very clear that you should use star ratings because you want more and more sales from your DTC platform. So, and that's
That's
why
a,
we see
yeah, very, very, very insightful point, I think. It always, I always felt that could be the case because on Amazon, for example, there's so many times, in fact, sometimes I feel cheated that way, that if I am searching
Hmm,
for something, right, and I always put the filter of 4 plus, and often Amazon will also show me some of the options which are, let's say, 3.9, but they will show it in
hmm,
the 4 plus filter,
hmm,
and then my
yeah,
brain somehow just assumes that, okay, and then it sees the stars and it does not intuitively pick it up that, hey, you know what, this is actually less than 4. It almost completes the picture and it's
yeah,
almost 4 or it's 4, right? So
yeah.
that's a very, very interesting insight, Deepak. Wow.
On the other hand, if you see 3.9 as numbers, you think it's almost 3. So
Yes, you
the
wouldn't
opposite
think it's
happens.
4. Absolutely, absolutely, very, very, very interesting.
So
Moving on to
one
one.
message to consumers,
Yeah.
last point on this. If you
Yes,
see
yes, of
prices
course.
as 3.99, please correct
Mm,
yourself that this price is
mm,
not 3.99, it's almost 4. But when you see a star rating
yeah,
as let's say 3.2, do
yeah.
not mistake it as a 4. Do not complete that picture. It's almost a 3 rating. So when
So
you're
as a
shopping
consumer, you
for
should,
prices,
yeah. So as a consumer, you should be taking that extra effort to consciously kind of realize the bias, I'm guessing, if you want to be a smart buyer.
I mean, if you don't want to be fooled by it, yeah, if you want to be a smart buyer. But if you are like, I don't care, I'm a millionaire, then fine, yeah, do whatever.
Yeah, I guess millionaires don't really have to worry that much. They'll always go for the the most expensive option anyway. So
Yeah. They have
great,
other
great,
worries in life.
Deepak. Very, very interesting point. The other topic that I'm very curious to ask you questions about is discounting.
Yeah.
As a marketer, of course, I am in the space of B2B marketing, but even there, right? I mean, discounting is always something that for marketers is a, it's almost like a brahmastra, right? कि आप use करो लेकिन
Yeah.
कितना use करना है, how do you want to use it, right? And how
Hmm.
do you use it without hurting your brand, right? How do consumers look at discounting? Do
Yeah.
they rationally think about the money they save, or is there again a bias, a cognitive
Yeah.
bias or a psychological bias that is there in discounting? Would love to get insights on that.
Yeah, I think it's a very big question, and I what I'm picking from your vaguely defined question is, do people like discounts, and how should brand give discounts so that they do not erode their brand equity? Like, how can
Yes,
brand show discounts while not reducing the premiumness that consumers perceive? Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I think one observation that I see, which is very different in India versus US or Canadian markets, is in India, if you go on the website, they would just be giving you discount like 80% off without providing any reason why it's 80% off, right? I worked for Oyo, and it was almost like I've seen it as a startup. I saw that we would just give 80-90% discount without telling the consumers why. And I'm a big fan of Shark Tank, and I often go and check these brands, and they would give like Shark Tank discount of 70%. So they do not provide a reason of why this discount exists. But on the West, like in the West, it's like a Black Friday sale or a Christmas sale, or it's more like you are a new user sale. So the reason why the sale exists is more clear, and I think that would make it less likely for the brand equity to erode. That subconsciously or consciously, or maybe I think, oh, this Bose is selling its speakers for 40% off because Black Friday. Everyone is supposed to give me a discount on Black Friday. So I don't think bad about Bose. But if you give me a Shark Tank deal of 70% off, I'm like, why are you giving me this? So maybe your brand is not that premium, and maybe the discount is just fake. You're just increasing the MRP and just slashing it by 90%. So one message is, make your discount reasoning more convincing so that the brand equity is not eroded. And one way to make it also more convincing is to not make it make give the discount forever. Like, it should be just in a period, let's say 2 days, 3 days. Don't make it too frequent. Keep it for special times to clear your inventory. Just don't give every week discount. Then consumers are like, yeah, your brand is not the MRP, it's actually the discounted price is your real price. So those will be some takeaways. Yeah, make discount more convincing. And I did not discuss much research on this subject because your question is, how can we reduce the erosion of brand equity? But there are a lot of interesting discounting papers, and maybe we can do one entire podcast on some discounting research.
Wow, very, very, interesting topic, especially the point that you mentioned about there being a clear reasoning which justifies a discount. I think you're right. I see that a lot in India. I mean, if I open Zepto, for example, of course, in case of platforms, they themselves also give a lot of these
Yeah,
discounts. It's not always the
yeah,
brand, but even them
yeah,
giving this discount, unless and until there is a strategic sort of reason behind it. Often people just assume that okay, maybe this brand is not that premium. Maybe on Amazon or
yeah,
Zepto or whatever of the platforms we use. Often we just see many brands which by default are at a 70% discount any time of the year you go, right? Which might actually negatively impact, like you said, right, the brand, because people
yeah.
will actually think
And
it's
then
not a
and then
premium brand.
and then when this brand does not give them a discount, consumers like, we are habituated to
Mhm.
getting a discount, then we don't want to pay the full price ever. Then they're
Yeah,
waiting for the discount, so they only buy when there's a discount. So that
right.
also has this negative effects. And another way of making discount more convincing is like having a bundled offer that only if you buy these two things together you get a 20% off, otherwise you don't. So make it more
Right.
convincing and give a better reason for consumers to get the discount. Don't make it too easy.
Right, absolutely. And as a platform, also, probably this is my thought, you tell me if it's the right direction. You have to figure out what is the optimal balance. On the one hand, discount nudges people to buy, of course. If I see, like you said, from numerical cognition, you see a number that 70% discount, you feel an urge to buy it, but then too much of it also might put you off as a consumer, or may result in the consumer thinking that, hey, this brand is not premium enough. I might get it at a much lower price, but am I going to get the quality, right? So figuring out that middle ground or that optimal amount of discount and reasoning is super critical.
And if you do, like, let's say you're saying 70% off is appealing, and if you want to run these discounts forever,
Yeah.
Why not create two brands, one brand that is premium and then another
Yeah.
brand that is typically known as segmentation? Why not create another brand which is seen as cheaper and you sell your
Mhm.
inventory through that brand, and make some differences in these product offerings, but then have two channels of it so that the
Yeah.
discounts don't erode the equity of the premium brand?
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes sense. So, and which I think a lot of at least Indian consumer brands, I'm seeing them do that more and more, creating a premium version of the of their, let's say, of their brand also is the other way that a
Yeah.
lot of companies are looking at. Very, very interesting, Deepak. We would love to actually maybe in another
Hmm.
podcast delve deeper into some of these from a research perspective also. Super, super
Yeah.
exciting and super relevant, I think, for marketeers, for founders, for even product managers, anybody who's thinking about GTM pricing, right,
Hmm.
and capturing market. I think these are very, very solid insights that they can use. Talking about, okay, we've spoken about how some of these biases exist, right, and how companies are probably leveraging them or should leverage them. But where do we draw the line? If we talk about
Yeah.
ethics, right, and I'm sure this is a question as a prof and as a researcher you often have to think about and answer. Uh,
Yeah.
what is your perspective on ethics of consumer behavior, consumer psychology research, and how it is leveraged to, if I may use the word, manipulate,
Yeah.
why people buy or how people buy?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Aditi, and thanks for bringing it up. In fact, if I did an implicit association test of marketing, I think one word that would come up is manipulation. Like when we hear marketing, we hear
Yeah,
manipulation. When we hear marketing, we think it's unethical. And
yeah.
a lot of shows have been created marketing just about is like crazy evil people trying to make people buy more even when they don't need it. A lot of that is one perspective. I would like to present the other perspective and let you think about what sits better with you. So there was an experiment done with wine. So half of the participants were shown that you are drinking wine, and they were shown that this wine is $10 wine. The other half participants were served the same wine, but they were told it's a $90 wine. So these both groups are drinking the same wine. One is drinking $10 wine, the other is drinking $90 wine, and it's an fMRI study. So we are not asking people how much do they like the wine, but it's an fMRI study where you're looking at their brain activation in the reward areas, in the reward regions. So how much activation is there in the reward centers, which is a proxy of how much pleasure do you get from this wine. And guess what? Even though these people were drinking the same wine, there was more activity in the reward centers for the $90 wine condition. So, why I'm telling you about this experiment is marketers might be creating value or selling value to consumers, and you may argue there is no value, you are just manipulating them. But what if it actually ends up delivering more value to them? Is like their reward centers are actually more activated just by seeing the ad. Then are we giving them real value or fake value? That's a philosophical question. One other study I would like to mention here is which was done at Cornell, where I did my PhD from. So this professor Catherine Braun, what she did is she served people orange juice, and this orange juice was, by the way, bitter. She adds something to make it bitter. Half of the participants drink the orange juice and then tell you how much did they like the orange juice. The other participants, they drank the orange juice, the bitter orange juice, and then they saw an ad about this orange juice. So they're drinking first and then seeing the ad. And then they were asked to recollect how was the orange juice. So even when the experience precedes the advertisement, they remembered orange juice being more tasty after seeing the ad. So even their memory was reconstructed, even though it was a bitter orange juice. So, in a lot of ways, these two experiments show that we are indeed actually convinced and we might enjoy these products more if we are advertised about them. So, marketing sometimes might be creating real value, but as you said, this line is very blurry. We cannot just sell people unhealthy food, and obesity is a big thing, especially in the West now, also in India. Diabetes is rising. We have to be very mindful about what we are doing. But what I want to say is it's not just fake value that we're delivering. Sometimes it creates real value as well.
Very, very interesting example, because it also makes me reflect, because as a marketer, right, I'm always thinking, There is, of course, your traditional marketing, your digital marketing, performance marketing, and then there is brand, right? And what is a brand? How do you build a brand? Um, what does a brand mean to people, right? And I think these are the things that really add up to building a brand, right? The little value sort of delivery, right? For example, in this case of the orange juice, now people will probably associate this orange juice as something which is a little bit different. It has a slight bitter taste, but which unique which is unique to that brand, and some people might even like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a, when you say creating a brand, there are elements of consumer psychology modification even that you have to create over a period of time, I guess, to build a truly differentiated brand. Do you see that? Is that something that you think there is a correlation? Say a Nike, right? Let's talk about a Nike. What do you think are those value sort of levers that exist in the consumer's mind for us to think that, hey, Nike, we think
Yeah.
Nike, we think world class sports brand, let's say.
Yeah, Nike is a great example. I discuss Nike in my consumer behavior class a lot because they have gone in a direction that they don't even advertise their product anymore. They
Yeah.
say it's more about self actualization, that go do it, and
Right.
it's all about you acknowledging who you are and achieving and growing better as a person. It's not about that our shoe is of better material or it can help you run better. It's just like go do it, achieve what you want to. So what I'm getting at is these brands can actually add meaning in your lives. They can make you achieve your goals and make you associate with an identity. Like if I wear Nike, I have a runner's identity, and that might help you feel better about running. That may make you feel better about sharing with your friends that I ran today, because you're now seeing yourself as a runner because you saw an ad about Nike shoes are associated with runners. So uh, marketing and branding play a bigger role in the society than what we just see, just see casually or at a surface level. It can actually give consumers meaning. But as I will keep going back. You have to draw the line for yourself. It can also be done in a very with very bad intention and also bad outcomes.
Absolutely. So marketeers or even founders or brands have to have ethics front and center when they are thinking about marketing, because otherwise, how do you figure out where do you draw the line? And it's important to draw the line not just from a perspective of ethics, but also from a perspective of sustainability. Because if you don't draw that line, at some
Yeah.
point the consumer will feel cheated, will feel disappointed, and then you will lose all the equity that you have built over a bit of time. Right. Deepak, very, very interesting insight again. I am curious to also understand a little bit about your journey, right? You were one of the founding team members of Oyo. You tasted a lot of success and did exciting things as a startup operator. And then you did a 180-degree shift in your career by getting into academics, right? Or maybe it's not 180 degree. Maybe it was something that you always had in the back of your mind, right? So tell us a little bit about, was there a eureka moment? Was there like a moment where you realized this is it, this is what I want to do? And the other question I have is, if there are closet academic researchers, people who really want to get into academia, but they just don't know what is the way forward, right? What are those two to three things you would recommend to folks?
Thanks, Aditi, again for asking that question. It's a personal passion for me to probably help other people to at least consider this option, because I'm a classic case of what is not an academic. My undergrad GPA was extremely low. I was in theater at IIT Kharagpur, and a lot of my friends would just see me as a consultant or as an entrepreneur, as a business person, but never someone who can do a PhD. So even now, when some of my undergrad network, they see that I'm a professor, they're like, what is, did I read something wrong? And they would reach out to me, what happened to you? How did this happen? How did you hack the system? And even my Oyo colleagues would think that I'm a salesperson. I'm like typical harami dhanda person, and dur dur tak I had no connection with academia. But as a child, I always was very curious about human behavior, society. Like I would ask seemingly philosophical questions even at the age of 10. And my childhood friends know that we would get into arguments about religion, about society, about ethics. So I had that curiosity angle. And in undergrad, when electrical engineering was seeming very daunting, I used to read marketing books by Philip Kotler. He used to be famous back then, Kellogg professor, his marketing books. So, and I did one course at IIT in humanities and social science. That was the only course where I got an A plus. So it was more about sociology of science. And so that was some like early points that are now I can see in the hindsight that I was always interested in this. But why I did choose to go into academia was Oyo was a great journey. I saw a lot of success, and I saw how to go from one room where we did not even have doors to keep it closed. Gurgaon, it used to get really cold in December when I joined the team, and we used to have like some chair around the door so that the cold air is not rushing in and we are not cold. Like from that room to going to like having the entire, we bought a big building, and not bought but rented in Sona, and we all know Oyo is a big company now. So I saw a lot of growth, saw a lot of personal milestones being achieved, and I asked myself, is this it? Like just now before the podcast you were saying that I sometimes question, is this it? So I think at the age of 27 that question loomed larger, that I have achieved, not so achieved in a sense, but whatever my undergrad version had the aspirations all got ticked. I saw startup world, I did one more job before that in IP law. So I had seen multiple sectors, and I didn't want to do an MBA because at Oyo we ended up hiring a lot of Stanford, Harvard MBA people who I was working with. I did not see myself doing that because I'd already seen the startup growth, right? So the question was, what do I do now? And I was deeply unsatisfied intellectually, I would say. I would admit that I was intellectually unsatisfied as to, we were doing a lot of meetings, we were doing a lot of growth, and we were trying to meet the investor vision, etc., etc. But am I doing any real problem solving? That was missing. Maybe it was about my role, maybe other people were satisfied. I don't want to paint broad strokes here. So I was reading this book called Thinking Fast and Slow while traveling to Europe with my friend, and I've told this story to a lot of my friends, but first time on a public platform. That each page that I read this book, I was like, wow, this is something I'm really interested in, and I would think about it a lot. And someone can study these thoughts in a systematic, scientific manner. That was giving me intellectual orgasms, honestly. So one of my friends told me that you already have a GMAT and you were thinking of applying for an MBA. You can use your GMAT score to apply for a PhD in a business school. And that thought was like very absurd to me. Like, how can I do a PhD? Like, I do not have a good GPA. I do not have a master's degree. Like, what are you saying? And but I could Google, and I could find that whatever he was saying was absolutely true. So one message from there is, what seems totally impossible right now, there might be a path out there. You just need to Google, or now chat GPT is there, right? You can just ask, is there a path forward? And who you so I want to also discuss about who, who you are, uh, that you should question this. Like, who should question this? Who should think about academia? There are some qualities I feel makes you well suited for academia if you're interested in this space. And I can only talk about business school academia. You can be doing a PhD in physics, and my insights or my learning experiences would have nothing to do with you. So it is more mainly about social sciences PhD, behavioral econ, human psychology, business school PhD. So some qualities, if you check on these, you should really consider if you're dissatisfied with what you're doing right now. One is, you are extremely curious person and you like to ask big questions. You like to ask things why they are, not just read about what they are. So if why is your favorite word and you are curious as a person, and I'm sure Aditi, I know you are really curious, and we have common friends who check this box. So if you are that person, that's the first box. Aditi, I think I
Yeah,
was
yeah. But
until where did you?
even if it goes off for a second, we should be okay. So we can go on.
Okay, okay. So the first tick box is, am I a curious person? Do I like to ask why? Do I like to ask big questions? And the second tick box is, which is more about, will you be successful, or do you have the ingredients to be successful in academia? Is, are you a problem solver or a go getter? Like even in corporate, sometimes problems are given to you, And there are two kinds of people: one who just figure out a way to solve it, other who will tell their boss or manager back that why they can't do it. So if you fall in the former category, that you will just figure out a way to do it, and you may be doing it as an entrepreneur or as an employee or as a working for an NGO or in whatever capacity. If you're a go-getter problem solver, that's a big ingredient of success in academia, because once you're admitted as a PhD student, you ask the question and you solve that, and you find the answer. No one will lay down the path to you how to find that answer. In fact, if you waited for someone to lay down the path, that would mean that you will not make it in this career. And the third thing is, which is very cliche, but you have the patience and relentless about a question. It takes 5 to 6 years sometimes to answer a question, or often, this is my first paper that came out, and it took me 6 years to land to this discovery. So you have to be patient and relentless. That is another quality. And overall, I think if you think there's nothing else that will give you meaning and joy in life, then consider academia. But if there are other things, I think you should prefer them because it's a shorter path in most cases. It's a more direct path. Academia is a path of a lot of pain, and it's not roses at all. But it's extremely meaningful and like uh, passion. If you're passionate about it, you'll find a lot of meaning in it and a lot of joy, and the community feeling and a lot of positives about it. Yeah.
I can see that for you, that really, is true, right? You found your purpose, and that really makes me so happy, Deepak, because you're also a friend, and we've spoken about your journey, right, even offline, and I've told you how amazing it is that you decided that you want to do this, and it was not an easy path, like you said, right? You had already tasted success in the startup world, right? But instead of continuing on, let's say, an easier path of that route where you already had that experience, you really followed what your passion was. So and which brings you to where you are today. And we are all the lucky ones then to have got all these insights from the research and the study that you have done, Deepak. Thank you so much. And I had a very insightful and fun conversation. I'm probably going to bug you offline on more questions on this, because as a marketeer also, while of course we are always in the zone of solving problems here and now, but it's important for us to think about some of these fundamentals, right? Your fundamentals need to be solid, and you also need to keep evolving and learning. And that's where academia comes in, even for us practitioners, right? So, Deepak, thank you so much. Had such an amazing time, and thank you for coming on the episode. And I hope to do maybe one more where we can go deeper into some of these questions.
Sure, Aditi. Thank you so much for having me. I really had a nice time.
Thanks, Deepak.
अभी रिकॉर्ड स्टॉप हो गया